Welcome to the 27th installment of the r/Civ Battle Royale, aka the World Cup of Modding. I'm your emergency rescue host, the bombastic Neighbour the Forgiven. And in true Canadian fashion, I'd like to start out by saying sorry. Sorry for the hasty narration. I'm doing this on a lunch break at work, so I only have 2 minutes per slide. Sorry for being biased. I made a good number of these civs, and for me, this is all about who can make the best, most bloodthirsty civs. Sorry for the inevitable rants that will take up all the slides. To tell TPang to never ever let me do this again, join us on r/Civ Battle Royale. Once again, a fantastic map lovingly crafted by Cylon L and Laxarax Araskal. Some lovely additions this time around, including the advent of water borders, puppeted territories, and power rankings. Today's Battle Royale begins with Babylonian drones hovering over the Maori capital. It's a lovely, picturesque morning, but if I was the Maori, I'd be quite scared by the dense water-bound carpet of death covering Australia's waters. If Pax the warmonger decides to turn it on the Maori, this sentence no longer makes any sense. As you can see, all these one-tile island cities just look like ripe kiwi fruit waiting to be picked by the Grand Wobbegong Armada. Again, this slide shows more and more Wobbegongs. It's insane how many privateers Australia has at her disposal. This slide shows my favourite children, the Inuit Ice Walkers, locked in battle against the Sleepwalkers of Yakutia. Actually, it shows them looking over the mountains at each other. Not much appears to be happening here. All knees should tremble at the sight of an Australian scout in the middle of Asia. After all, where a scout comes, Wobbegong water carpets follow. Also, this slide shows the Himalayan cavalry, a knight replacement that moves quickly on hills and can suck culture straight out of mountain ranges. Likely by posting snapshots on Instagram. Here we see what's left of the Congo, or New Draka as we like to call it. This slide also shows an incredible amount of pillars of smoke, as the Boer commandos pillage was left of Northern Africa in their zeal to remove all non-colonialist legacy civs from Africa. Finally, red numbers fly out of units. Here we see the Ayyubids attempting to rush great profits into Carthage as a sort of convert or die tactic. The question is, do these prophets spread Islam or Judaism? Just like my lunch break, the Poles and the Germans are running out of time. The Swedes and the Spartans are picking up the remains of these once great empires. Empires? Maybe that's a bit too generous. Almost nothing to see here. The 3 naval empires who have done the least in the last time, we do get a peek of the Icelandic Skald, which is a naval scout/settler. It's not armed, but it is a threat to any unsettled land in the world. With any luck, we may see a few new Viking expansions. Here, the Babylonian periscopes reveal what everyone knew already. Portugal's Western Naval Defence Force has been reduced to a few motley vessels, and unless the Eastern Navy comes to her aid, Portugal will soon find herself without any ports, including her capital. Or who are we kidding? If the Eastern Navy descends, it will soon find out what happens when you sail against Corsair fleets. I'm not looking ahead, so I don't know if Attila falls today. I do know that Beaumont will soon be flying Siberian colours, so grey and grey. Also, Finland has finally ended the war of North American aggression. Without fighting. The only thing to point out here as we see Mbanza Congo switch hands again is that the Congo tactic of bombarding the crap out of her former cities is reducing the population of the African West Coast into oblivion. At this point, it's only a matter of time until the cities are reduced to nothing beneath the boot of Kruger. Finland in all her glory. Notice the fairly powerful navy in the Baltic Sea. A little bit to the west, we gaze in awe at Sweden, the civ I personally nominate for biggest surprise badass of the Civ BR Mark II. Illuminated by the great arrow in the sky, we see their UU, a lancer replacement that synergizes with great generals. Like, you know, the ones all around it. In a desperate attempt to save himself, Attila has made peace with the wrong enemy. Stalin was a threat, for sure, but his forces aren't camping on Attila's doorstep. Also, Beaumont is currently arrayed in 2 shades of grey. Japan, or you know, what's left of it. Meiji Japan trades Bushido, which means no damage reduction from injured troops, for Imperial Reverence, extra XP, culture and gold during Golden Ages, and I can't say that they've benefited much from it, especially being on the receiving end of both Henry Parks and now Dark Khan. Israel is watching, as always. Dark Khan, shocked by the events of the past week, decides to stand with Paris, declaring a peace treaty. In other news, the Inca have declared war on Chile. What are they thinking? And yes, that is a huge, powerful navy. Strangely, Australia's land forces seem sparse in comparison. Will the Kimberley take the chance and strike? One can only hope. Pachacuti floats his navy of old toy boats towards Bernardo O'Higgins. This war will be sadly choked, as only one tile will allow land troops through. Advantage: O'Higgins, the one tile passes through his citadels and into his generals. Surprisingly, Leiria seems to be doing better than when we last saw her, which makes no sense. I claim that Portugal has been saved by the barricade of neutral Icelandic, Moroccan and Norwegian ships, making it hard for the pirates to line up for a good shot. The dying breaths of the two red and black nations of Europe, poetically covered in streams of yellow troops from the north and south. The capitals of Germany and Poland are like two bodies in a hexagonal yin-yang. On the far right of this slide, we can see the Armenian UU, the Mamikonian general. It increases the siege damage of nearby mounted units and causes them to gain additional gold when they attack a city that follows a non-Jewish religion. What's more crazy is that the Mamikonian isn't a great general replacement, it's a prophet. Clearly, it takes after Samson and Ehud, not some preacher with a beard. Texas, mighty savage Texas. Texas is surrounded by nations with better technology, who just entered the industrial era. Even Lincoln has better guns than Texas. Sam Houston had better work fast on his getting smarter, if he doesn't want to be humiliated by the two traditionally worst fighters in all of North America. This slide shows my favourite children, Canada, my home and native land. True patriot love flows from my heart as I blithely ignore the fact that they have also just entered the industrial era. Like Texas, while Canada is mighty indeed, they've got to get their act together if they don't want to be showed up by Iceland or the United States, or even worse, my favourite children, the Inuit. Hey, look at that, it's the Zulu. They're really only relevant right now because they show that Zingambande has regained not one but 3 cities, soon to be 2. Is it possible that the Boers are losing their grasp on the west coast? Oh yeah, the Zulu. That's an impressive number of Impi, the greatest UU in the game. Too bad that the age of the Impi is coming to an end. Soon, they'll be crushed beneath tank tracks. It's hard to tell from this slide, but the Yakutian sleepwalker forces at the bottom of the slide have slowly, inexorably pushed through Japan's meager defenses to the north of Hiroshima. In another place, the Ice Walkers have slowly, inexorably pushed through Yakutia's more significantly powerful defenses around Centaur. And Lester B. Pearson, who undoubtedly actually started this war, has declared peace. This slide shows my favourite child, Afghanistan. They're beginning the first few turns of war with Persia. It's anyone's guess who's going to win this one. Both armies seem sparse and outdated, and Darius is probably the only civ that borders Afghanistan that has a free path to their cities. Except the Muggles, and we both know they won't be doing anything about it. Finally, at long last, we get a shot of the Muggles. Their UU, the Farsak cannon, looks amazing and packs a huge punch. It does have a weakness, however. It can only move when it's at full health, which means that it is the perfect weapon to represent a turtle empire like the Mughals. Poor Hannibal. Alexandria is just out of reach of his navy, and his land forces don't seem to be able to push past the Ayyubid forces, despite being apparently more technologically advanced, which isn't saying much, to be honest. Here we see a lot of Finnish Yarkari, cheap, mass-produced riflemen who gain XP when in friendly territory. But who cares? Vietnam DOW'd Burma. Let's go watch. The Trung sisters just declared war on the Burmese. Vietnam has more cities, more troops, and obviously more technologies. On the flip side, Vietnam has no defenses around Sengexangbo, and the Burmese are looking to take that city easily. A Portuguese man-o'-war in a toy boat watches in rapt attention as Kruger prepares to conquer the entire Congo coast. Nzingambande no longer has any cities that aren't in the middle of falling to Kruger's commandos. Also, having recently been converted to Judaism, Saladin has begun spamming Africa with scouts. This slide settles it. Kamehameha isn't in this game to fight wars. He's in the game to troll the other leaders by spamming his neutral units into all of their wars, gumming up the works and keeping the peace. And he's doing a better job of it than Pachacuti or Bernie are doing of fighting a war. Of note, the Chilean Navy is quickly resorting to their past life backdoor methods, moving around the Incan toy boat fleet. We'll see how this works out. I'd like to pause on this slide to dedicate this Civ BR part to my wife's grandfather, David Enns, who passed away this evening after a lengthy illness. May your memory live on, enshrined within our hearts. Be at peace. So, there was some proper mood whiplash, apparently. Now, to finish the job, France and Ireland declare war on what's left of the English Commonwealth. They shouldn't have much trouble pushing Elizabeth over the brink into dark waters. Hawaii, island paradise of Kamehameha, who spends his days surfing, drinking, and trolling South American battlefields. His navy is decent, but won't stand a chance against Australia's Grand Wobbegong Armada. Hawaii is just ripe for the picking. On this slide we see Gajah Mada, fat, lazy, incompetent coward. Today he pretends to be strong by declaring war on Burma, knowing full well that the Champers stand between himself and any danger. A shame too, since his navy looks like it could actually do something if Gajah Mada wasn't too afraid to actually do something. Darius, glorious lord of Persia, is beset on both sides by attackers. Luckily for him, he does not seem to be threatened much by Armenia. More worrisome is the carpet of trebuchets and the occasional death camel TM moving towards Susa and Tarsus from Afghanistan. Veraconium, the last bastion of Attila the Hun. He rolls in defiance from atop Attila's court, his personal pimped-out trebuchet, while keeping the getaway caravan running just in case. Ladies and gentlemen, prime your F-keys. There's no way that trebuchet, no matter how many modifications you make, will survive the hail of gunfire coming from rifles and Gatling guns of Kuchum Khan. Well, we knew that Korea was ahead technologically, but we had no idea how far ahead. Seong shows off his newest brainwave, a ship that sails beneath the waves. I'm assuming this is a joke, or that Seong managed to bribe some passing Babylonians with a year's supply of kimchi. When you live on a sub eating rations, kimchi will buy anything. The dead red cities refuse to finish passing on to the next life. It's actually somewhat impressive. Get your bets in now, who will go first? Adolf Hitler, Casimir III of Poland, or Attila the Hun? Lyria's reprieve seems to be coming to an end. Surrounded by the buccaneer warships, it's only a matter of time before the city falls and Lisbon becomes the only logical target for Henry Morgan's first European port of call. Canada's caravels watch in aghast fascination. You'd best be taking notes, eh? Hitler wins, or does he lose, the race to annihilation? Or does he? This slide shows the Führer running for the hills with his donkeys and wives in tow. Perhaps he will reappear later, with a secret island lair or masquerading as Gran Colombia. This slide shows my favourite children, the Kimberley Aboriginals. Like Australia, the Kimberley have placed all of their forces on the seas and have very few land troops. It's like the two are fast friends who trust each other to the bitter end. Which is pretty fucking lame if you ask me. Once again, the Boers have conquered most of the Congo coast. Assaulting all of what's left of the Congolese cities, Kruger has forced the Congo Coast Guard to split its forces against 5 points of interest. This drawn-out war has left the Burr-Ethiopian border open, guarded only by workers. Haile Selassie could gain much from a quick strike. So confident is Henry Morgan of a European land operation that he has sent land forces, pikes and muskets across the Atlantic. Joining him on stage night, Chilean caravels. Also note, it's very hard to tell Chileans from pirates. I think there's 3 Chilean units on this side, but I could be wrong. In fact, these could all be Chileans, except for the Corsairs. In his final dying throes, Attila promises Kuchum Khan that, in exchange for his life, he'll point a finger at Meiji. Surprisingly, Sabir spares Attila for now. Which brings up the question, what will Kuchum Khan do with his massive army? Those men and horses are paid and fed with the blood of formerly great leaders. I'm looking at you, Genghis. Yakutia and the Inuit seem to have fought more or less to a standstill within the frozen mountains of Kamchatka, but Khan has dispatched a new wave of soldiers towards Igloo Lake, where a few more Inuk watch from behind their Inuksut. That's a singular Inuit and more of one Inuksuk, for the record. Chile in all her glory. Bernardo O'Higgins seems to be building up some new forces, spurred on by his wars with Portugal and the Inca. But while he may be a strong force in South America, he's nothing on the rest of the world. He better hope that Henry Morgan keeps his tate for Pisco Sour long enough to allow O'Higgins to rise to the global level. Continuing my previous obsession, Leiria is still not dead. The Buccaneers' warships seem to be thinning, surprisingly enough. Of particular personal interest to me, Hastings isn't dead yet either. Maybe it's my hopeful imagination, but Australia seems to be starting to amass land troops and generals on its western borders. Perhaps something's up. We can only hope. This is a rather sparsely populated shot of Vietnam, but what forces are here are relatively high in technology compared to Sri Lanka and the Mongols. On the flip side, they're low in power compared to South Korea. Malachy II has wrested control of all what should now be called Great Ireland from the British. But his army is so dated that it's almost ancient. All he needs is one of the other nations, Iceland or Norway for instance, to realise that new lands are only a quick conquest away. The Grand Wobbegong Armada is on the move. Wherever it's headed, death is sure to follow. The Meiji had better sue for peace before there's nothing left of Japan but the pieces. Once again, the Yo-Yo coast has been painted with a slightly greenish shade of yellow. Stay tuned for next slide when they'll be orange again. We get a bird's eye view of the Second Bottleneck War. The most interesting thing about this slide is the denouncement in the upper right corner. Kuchum Khan may have found a new source of blood to feed his Sabir armies: Tibet. Leiria does not fall to the Buccaneers. Henry Morgan sued for peace when he saw an impi on the shores of Portugal. Any wise leader would. O'Higgins, however, is still at war with Portugal, at least for now. This slide shows my favourite children, Canada, the true North and free. If they want to stay that way, they need to step up their technology or production game before Canada falls into irrelevance. Of note, the Blackfoot have Gatling guns. Canada does not. The Afghan-Persian War, or the Great Rug War, is probably good for both nations, giving them a chance to weed out their old units and replace them with more powerful ones, such as Gatling guns and death camels. Speak of the devil and he will come, the death camel or Zambarak. The Zambarak is a ridiculously fast version of the Gatling gun, capable of moving 5 hexes in a single turn, which means that a Zambarak built in any of these Afghan cities can be on the front line almost immediately. The balance of power has shifted oh so slightly towards Yakutia, but Akunik has finally mobilized his navy. If it gets around to the other side of Kamchatka, Darkhan may have something to worry about finally. Of note, the only sea path to the Bay of Kamchatka goes through Japanese waters. The Inuit will need a peace or war to get there. Ladies and gentlemen, prime your F keys. After hearing about Attila the Hun, the Sioux try to hold off the White Walkers with a tricked out trebuchet. Two problems: the Inuit have cannons, and the Sioux don't have a getaway camel. A panoramic view of the Icelandic navy. There's enough caravels and frigates here to do some real damage, if Ingolfur Arnolfsson could figure out who to unleash them on. In this slide we see my favourite children, the Blackfoot. Buffalo Boys, or Bison Boys, have embraced autocracy, declaring their intention to rise to the top. In their favour, Texas and Canada are behind the curve in technology. Unfortunately for them, Mexico and the Inuit are fielding more advanced armies. When a Kunik finishes off the Sioux, he may choose to turn on the other Plain Indians in the Battle Royale Mark II. Autocracy has the rule of the day, with only one order civ, Afghanistan, and one freedom civ, the United States, shown here. Unsurprisingly, Lincoln's people think he made the wrong decision. They don't want to be the only hated people in a world congress full of dictators. The Soviet Union has adopted order, joining the Afghans in common solidarity. Pet theory: the reason that Ayyubid Prophet is still wandering among the Asian cities is because that prophet spreads Judaism, not Islam. He's looking for a city that doesn't already follow the one true God, YHWH. Stat time, also known as the part of the show where we all try to look around the box with the stats in it and try to find out if the Sioux are dead. The Maori, Australians and Boers are winning this one, but of special interest is Texas and Canada. Population is stepping stone to science, so Houston and Pearson may finally be getting their acts together. Poland, the Huns and the Sioux, three nations on the brink of annihilation. Notice that Germany is not on this list. That settler must have perished, or is paying T-Pang in mulled wine to hide the fact that he's founding a secret base in Gran Colombia. Surprisingly, Tibet, which hasn't lost a city in a long time, is on this list. Land area. Australia still has 1 million square kilometers on the Inuit, but the most impressive stat on this list is Sibir. 4.25 million square kilometers of almost pure conquest in the hotly contested mid-Asian region. It's amazing how small Poland has begun when it has even less land area than the Sioux. If you peek around the stat block, you might be able to see why Burma has even less land area than ever before. Just saying. As technologically superior as Korea is, the Boers are right up there with them. Keep your eyes peeled for a Boer submarine. Just peeking onto this slide, Vietnam. The Trung sisters are working their way up to the top again. Also of note, Brazil. Several of these civs are dead or dying, but the most important thing to take away is that most of Africa is on this list, whereas the Boers are on the other technology list. You know, the good one. Australia, the Inuit, the Boers and Sibir are far ahead to the rest of these civs. Surprisingly, the Soviet Union is on this list. Perhaps in time they will rise against their more tired, war-torn neighbours. England, Poland, the Huns and the Sioux all make up the One City Club. Nzingambande of Congo made 3 cities by the end of the part. This part's surprise stat is great works. We see that Iceland, with their special great writers, are in the lead with 8 great works. The Kimberley, Arabians and surprisingly the Boers all bring up the 2nd place. Sadly, there's no slide for the Philistine iconoclasts at the bottom. Apologies to any Philistine fans out there. Judaism is still number 1. Though just by a hair. Pope Juarez has basically tied things up, spiritually. The world map according to faith. Atheist South America is slowly seeing the light of the Catholic Church, brought down by buccaneer pirates and their bread and rum communion rituals. And with that, part 27 comes to a close. Thank you all for putting up with my delays, for all your support, both for the r/civ Battle Royale Mark II community and for all of us mod developers. Also, I have a personal question. How the fuck do you pronounce Maori? Because I've heard people saying, I'm from New Zealand and you pronounce it Maori, and others said the exact same thing, I'm from New Zealand and you pronounce it Maori, and some African dude told me to fuck off, and because I was racist, just assuming that he knew how to say that because he's also black. You know, I just want to know, how do you actually do it? Like, really? Because I don't know anymore. Really?